I stood shivering in the torrential rain as my husband tossed my last suitcase into the mud outside the mansion I designed brick by brick. He laughed while clutching his mistress, declaring I had no value in his world. But neither knew the ground beneath their feet belonged to the billionaire father I had hidden for 10 years. The lease expires the second he signs the divorce papers. My name is Elena, and at 32 years old, standing in the freezing deluge of a California storm, I watched my life shatter against the iron gates of the estate I had built. The rain came down in sheets, soaking through my thin blouse and chilling me to the bone. But the cold was nothing compared to the burning humiliation radiating from the other side of the fence. Marcus stood there, safe under the grand archway of the entrance, holding the leather portfolio that contained the original blueprints of Blackwood Manor. "Get out!" Marcus screamed, his voice cutting through the thunder. "And take your trash with you," with a cruel heave. He launched the portfolio into the air. It landed with a wet slap in a muddy puddle at my feet. I watched in horror as the water seeped into the leather, destroying the sketches, the structural calculations, and the hand-drawn renderings I had spent the last 8 years perfecting. He was not just throwing away paper. He was drowning my youth, my talent, and the sweat I had poured into every single beam and cornice of this house. "Marcus, please, those are the originals," I choked out, my teeth chattering uncontrollably. "You can't just—" "Oh, look at her. She looks like a drowned rat," a high-pitched voice giggled from the dry, warm safety of the porch. I looked up to see Jessica, the 22-year-old Instagram model Marcus had been claiming was his administrative assistant, leaning against the stone pillar. She was holding her phone up, the ring light reflecting in her eyes, live streaming my eviction to her thousands of followers. Beside her stood Patricia, my mother-in-law, wrapped in a cashmere shawl. Patricia looked at me with a smirk of pure satisfaction, as if she were finally flushing a bug down the drain. "Say goodbye to the viewers," Elena Jessica chirped, zooming in on my shaking hands. Marcus wrapped his arm around Jessica's waist, pulling her close. "I don't need you anymore, Elena. I certainly don't need a second-rate architect nagging me about budgets. I just signed the exclusive deal with Vanguard Horizons this morning. $50 million. Do you hear me? $50 million. He emphasized every word, savoring the taste of the money he thought he had earned. "Marcus, listen to me," I shouted over the wind, desperation clawing at my throat. "The contract. You didn't read the fine print about the land. There are huge risks if you—" "Shut up," Marcus roared, stepping closer to the gate bars but careful not to get his Italian loafers wet, always trying to sound smart. "You are nothing. You come from nothing, and you are going back to nothing. My mother was right about you. You were always just a gold digger from the gutter." He turned his back on me. The heavy automated gates began to close, sealing them inside the warmth and light, leaving me in the dark. I turned to my car, a battered sedan that I had driven for 10 years because Marcus insisted we needed to reinvest every cent into his image. I jammed the key into the ignition and turned it. The engine sputtered, coughed once, and died. "No, no, no, no. Come on," I whispered, slamming my hand against the steering wheel. A burst of laughter came from the security booth. The guards, men I had brought coffee and donuts to every Christmas, were watching me struggle through the window, amused by my downfall. I could not stay here. I stepped out of the useless car, grabbed the handle of my heavy suitcase, and began to drag it through the mud. At the end of the driveway, I paused. I looked back at the mansion looming on the hill. I remembered painting the nursery room that never got used. I remembered laying the patio stones with my own hands to save money on contractors. It was a masterpiece of modern architecture, and it was a monument to my naive, stupid love. My chest felt like it was being crushed. I pulled my phone from my pocket, shielding it from the rain with my body, and dialed the number of my best friend. It rang, and rang, and rang. Please, pick up. Just pick up. I sobbed into the receiver. The call went to voicemail. I lowered the phone, standing alone on the dark sidewalk of Beverly Hills, surrounded by millions of lights, yet engulfed in total, suffocating darkness. The cold rain on my face faded away, replaced by the warm, golden haze of memory. My mind drifted back 8 years, to a time when I was just a 24-year-old architecture student desperate to escape the suffocating gravity of my last name. I had walked away from the Sterling Empire, dropped the name that opened every door in New York, and reinvented myself as Elena Vance. I wanted to be an architect, not an heiress, and I wanted to succeed on my own merit without my father, William Sterling, pulling the strings from his ivory tower. I met Marcus at a chaotic construction site in downtown Los Angeles. He was not the polished millionaire in Italian silk he is today. Back then, he was a small-time contractor drowning in debt, wearing dusty jeans and a hard hat that had seen better days. But he had a smile that could convince the sun to rise at midnight. I was interning for the site manager, and Marcus was arguing with a supplier about the cost of lumber. Listen to me. I can't pay you until the job is done, Marcus was saying, his voice strained with a charming sort of desperation. But, I swear on my mother's life, you will get every cent. He turned and saw me holding a roll of blueprints. The frustration vanished from his face, replaced by a dazzling, predatory focus. And who might you be, he asked, wiping the dust from his hand before offering it to me. We went for coffee that afternoon. He spent 2 hours talking not about profits, but about people. He told me he wanted to build affordable housing, safe havens for families who had been forgotten by the system. Elena, imagine a world where a single mother doesn't have to choose between rent and food, he said, his eyes shining with what I thought was passion. That is what I want to build. But I just need someone who understands the vision. I was captivated. I saw a man with a noble soul, not realizing that the nobility was just a costume he wore to hide his ambition. I decided right then to never tell him about my father. I wanted Marcus to love Elena, the struggling student, not Elena, the billionaire's daughter. I wanted something real. 6 months later, we were married in a civil ceremony that cost less than $200. It was all we could afford. My family was not there, of course. Marcus's family was. His mother, Patricia, wore a black dress as if she were attending a funeral. Well, Patricia said loud enough for me to hear during the reception at a cheap diner. At least she is pretty. It is a pity she is a stray. No connections, no money. Marcus, are you sure about this? You could have found someone with assets. Mom, stop it, Marcus said, though he did not look angry. He just looked resigned. Elena is supportive. That support became the backbone of his existence. As his wife, I threw myself into his failing business. I discovered quickly that Marcus was a charming salesman but a terrible builder. He underestimated costs and ignored structural realities. I began working 18 hours a day. I sat at our small kitchen table, redrawing his flawed plans, correcting his load-bearing calculations, and turning his disasters into viable projects. The first major success, the Riverside complex, was entirely my design. I stayed up for 3 nights straight to fix the layout after Marcus misread the zoning laws. When the project was approved and praised by the city council, Marcus stood in front of the cameras, beaming. I stood behind the cameraman, holding his coat, happy just to see him shine. We did it, I whispered to him later that night. I did it. He corrected me with a laugh, kissing my forehead. But you helped, babe. You really helped. The red flags were there, woven into the fabric of our rise to power, but I was too in love to see them. The defining moment came 2 years into our marriage. Marcus won the Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. We sat at a gala table that cost more than our first car. When his name was called, he bounded onto the stage, grabbing the trophy with a hunger that frightened me for a second. He gave a 10-minute speech thanking his investors, his mother for her resilience, and even his banker. I sat there, clutching my purse, waiting for my name. I waited for him to acknowledge the woman who had drawn every blueprint, managed every crisis, and saved his company from bankruptcy 3 times. And finally, Marcus said, looking out into the crowd. I straightened my back, a smile ready. To my future, which is looking brighter every day. The applause was deafening. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. When he came back to the table, flushed with victory, he didn't even notice my silence. "Did you hear them, Elena?" he asked, pouring himself a glass of champagne. "They love me." I knew. I just knew I was destined for this. "You were amazing, Marcus," I said softly, swallowing the lump in my throat. "But you didn't mention the design team." He laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "Oh, honey, nobody cares about the details. They care about the face of the empire, and that is me." As the zeros on our company bank account multiplied, Marcus's ego inflated until there was no space left for me. He became obsessed with forcing his way into the circle of the ultra-wealthy, and to do that, he decided we needed a palace. He demanded that I design Blackwood Manor, a project so ambitious it would usually require a team of 10 architects. Instead, it was just me. I sat bent over my drafting table for 16 hours a day, my eyes burning and my back screaming in agony, while Marcus hovered over my shoulder, pointing out flaws that did not exist. To make matters worse, Patricia moved into our townhouse to supervise the transition. She treated me not as the lead architect of her son's company, but as an unpaid maid. When I finally emerged from my office at 10 at night, famished and exhausted, I would find a sink full of dirty dishes and a pile of laundry waiting for me. "Elena, the meat was dry tonight," Patricia would say from the couch, not looking up from her television show. No wonder Marcus is always stressed. A man needs a wife who can cook, and, frankly, a wife who can give him an heir. Still nothing this month. The stress eventually caused my body to shut down. I collapsed in the hallway one Tuesday morning. I woke up in a hospital room with an IV drip in my arm, the white walls spinning around me. I checked my phone, expecting a flood of worried messages. There was nothing. When I called Marcus, he answered over the roar of loud music. "Marcus, I'm in the hospital." I fainted. I whispered, my voice weak. "Babe, I can't talk right now," he shouted back. "I am at the gala with the city council. This is huge for networking. Take an Uber home when you are done." "Okay." He hung up before I could say I was scared. When I was discharged, I discovered that my access to our finances had been revoked. I went to the pharmacy to pick up my prescription, and the credit card was declined. When I confronted Marcus, he sat calmly at his desk, counting a stack of cash. "I am taking over the finances." "Elena," he said, not meeting my eyes, "you are too emotional with money. I need to make sure every cent is reinvested in the brand. You don't need cash. If you need tampons or milk, just ask me." I felt a cold shiver of fear, but I told myself it was for the business. Then I found the receipts. While looking for a tax document, I found an invoice for a diamond bracelet costing $5,000. I had never received a diamond bracelet. "It is a networking cost," Elena Marcus snapped when I showed him the paper. "It was a gift for the wife of a potential investor. You wouldn't understand. You have no head for business." Around this time, Jessica appeared. She was the new administrative assistant, fresh out of college with a wardrobe that cost more than my tuition. She sat in meetings, tapping her pen, rolling her eyes whenever I spoke about structural integrity or budget constraints. "Marcus, I think Elena is being a bit old-fashioned," Jessica would say, leaning over the table to show off her neckline. "Modern buyers want flash, not whatever this is." I tried to fight for us, I tried to rekindle the man I thought I married. I cooked a candlelight dinner, his favorite roast, and waited. The candles burned down to nubs. The food went cold. The clock struck 1 in the morning, then 2. When Marcus finally stumbled through the door, he did not smell like a construction site or an office. He reeked of expensive floral perfume. "You're late," I said, standing up from the table, my hands trembling. "And you smell like her." Marcus slammed his briefcase onto the floor, his face twisting into a mask of pure contempt. "Stop it," he yelled, pointing a finger in my face. "You are crazy. This jealousy, it is pathetic. Do you know why I am out late? Because I have to work twice as hard to overcome the anchor around my neck. That is you. Your lack of connections, your poverty mindset. It is suffocating me. If I am not successful yet, it is because you are dragging me down." I stood there, stunned into silence, letting his words twist my reality until I actually began to believe that his betrayal was somehow my fault. The dream of Blackwood Manor turned into a nightmare the day the bank finally said no. We were bleeding money. The marble imports from Italy had tripled in price, and the custom steel framework was months behind schedule. When the rejection letter for the bridge loan arrived, the air in our small office grew so heavy it felt like it might ignite. Marcus did not just get angry. He exploded. He swept his arm across his desk, sending his computer monitor and a crystal decanter crashing to the floor. The sound of shattering glass made me flinch against the wall. "They rejected us," Marcus screamed, his face turning a terrifying shade of purple. "Those suits, they don't understand vision. We need $10 million by Friday, or the crews walk off the job. We are finished. Do you hear me?" "Finished, Marcus. Please calm down," I pleaded, stepping over the broken glass to reach him. "We can find another way. Maybe we can scale back the landscaping, or—" "Scale back!" he roared, spinning around to face me. "This isn't a suburban tract house, Elena. This is a palace. We can't scale back." He grabbed my shoulders, his fingers digging into my skin hard enough to bruise. His eyes were wild, searching my face with a desperate, manic intensity. "You need to fix this," he hissed. "You have friends from college. Surely one of them married rich. Ask them, beg them." "I can't ask them for that kind of money." "Marcus," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "Then find a client," he shouted, shoving me away. "There is that investor, Mr. Henderson. He likes you. He is always staring at your legs. Go have dinner with him. Be nice to him. Do whatever it takes to get that check signed. You are a pretty woman, Elena." Use that. I felt like he had slapped me. My husband, the man I worshipped, was suggesting I prostitute myself for concrete and steel. I ran to the bathroom and locked the door, sliding down to the cold tile floor. I sobbed until my chest ached, but beneath the humiliation, a twisted resolve formed. I could not let him fail. I could not let us fail. If I saved the company, he would respect me again. He would love me like he used to. There was only one option left. I pulled my phone out and stared at the contact I had not touched in 8 years. My thumb hovered over the screen. I was breaking my vow, but I had no choice. I dialed. The phone rang 3 times. Then, a voice as deep and cold as the ocean answered. "I was wondering when you would call," William Sterling said. "Daddy, I choked, unable to form the words. "I need help." I poured everything out. I told him about the project, the vision, and the money we needed. I left out Marcus's rage and the abuse, painting a picture of a couple just needing one lucky break. "So," my father said, his voice devoid of warmth. The little contractor bit off more than he could chew. "I told you he was a parasite. Elena, he is using you. No, he loves me. He is just stressed." I defended him, wiping my eyes. "Please, Dad, If you ever loved me, help us. I will never ask for anything again." There was a long silence on the other end. "Fine," he said abruptly. "I will fund the completion of the estate, but my name stays out of it. I will route the $50 million through a shell corporation called Vanguard Horizons. Your husband will think he seduced a venture capital firm. If he knows it is me, his ego will ruin the deal. Thank you. Thank you so much." I wept. When I told Marcus that I had secured a meeting with an exclusive fund called Vanguard Horizons, the transformation was instant and terrifying. The monster vanished. He picked me up and spun me around, kissing my face, calling me his genius, his muse, his savior. "I knew you could do it," he exclaimed, popping a bottle of champagne. "I'm sorry," I yelled, "babe. The stress, it just gets to me. You know I love you, right? I know," I said, drinking the lie because I was thirsty for his affection. 2 days later, the papers arrived. They were thick and full of legal jargon. Marcus was so excited he was practically vibrating. I saw the stamp of Vanguard Horizons and felt a wave of relief. I trusted my father to save me financially, and I trusted my husband to love me emotionally. "Just sign here as the technical guarantor," Marcus said, handing me a pen. "It is just a formality." I did not read the fine print. I did not see the clauses about ownership transfer or the specific stipulations regarding marital fidelity. I just wanted the shouting to stop. I wanted the happy ending. So I signed my name, sealing my fate with ink that was barely dry before Marcus snatched the papers away to mail them. The representative from Vanguard Horizons arrived at our office in a black sedan that looked like a hearse. His name was Mr. Thorne, a man with eyes like polished flint and a smile that did not reach them. He placed a binder as thick as a brick on the conference table. Inside that binder lay the future of our company, or so Marcus believed. To my husband, it was just a gateway to $50 million. To Mr. Thorne, who was secretly my father's personal attorney, it was a steel trap waiting to snap shut. Marcus was vibrating with adrenaline. He clicked his expensive fountain pen, his eyes darting to the signature line on the final page, completely ignoring the 200 pages of dense legal text that preceded it. "Mr. Vance," Mr. Thorne said, his voice smooth and dangerous. "I must advise you to review the terms. Specifically, the clauses regarding asset collateral and the conditions of the technical guarantor. I don't have time for reading the dictionary." "Thorne," Marcus laughed, a manic sound that bounced off the glass walls. "I trust the money. That is all that matters. Where do I sign?" He scribbled his name with a flourish. He did not see the paragraph in Section 14. Subsection B. It stated clearly that the ownership of the land and all structures upon it remained the sole property of the investment fund until the principal plus interest was repaid in full over a term of 5 years. He also missed the lethal addendum at the bottom of page 112. It was a morality clause, rare in modern business, but legally binding here. It stipulated that the right to use the property would be revoked immediately if the borrower engaged in conduct violating marital ethics or initiated divorce proceedings against the designated technical guarantor, which was me. The moment the wire transfer hit the company account, the Marcus I knew died completely. The monster that replaced him was fueled by sudden, unearned wealth. The very next day, he drove into the office parking lot in a neon green Lamborghini that cost $300,000. He stopped hiding Jessica. They would walk into the office together, her hand resting possessively on his arm, while the staff looked at me with pity. I tried to attend the weekly board meeting to discuss the interior finishes for the mansion, but my keycard did not work. I knocked on the glass door. Inside, Marcus sat at the head of the table with Jessica sitting in my chair. "Marcus." "Open the door," I shouted, pressing my hand against the glass. He looked up, annoyed, and pressed the intercom button. "You are disrupting the meeting. "Elena," he said coldly, "we don't need you. Jessica is handling the design coordination now. She has a fresher perspective. Go home." I went home, but there was no sanctuary there either. Patricia had taken over the living room, spreading her magazines across the coffee table I had restored myself. "Oh, look who is back early," Patricia sneered, sipping her tea. "I saw the design for the new master bedroom. Jessica has such wonderful taste. Gold leaf and velvet. Much better than that depressing minimalist trash you like. Honestly, Elena, you are like a leech. You live in my son's house, spend his money, and contribute absolutely nothing." I bit my lip until it bled, refusing to cry in front of her. I retreated to the guest room, the only place they hadn't invaded yet. 3 weeks later, Blackwood Manor was complete. It stood on the hill, a colossal testament to my skill and Marcus's vanity. He announced that we would be moving in immediately. As I packed my boxes, I watched him from the window. He was standing in the garden with Jessica, pointing at the balcony, laughing as if he owned the world. He believed he had won. He believed he was the king of the castle, preparing to exile the queen who built it for him. He had no idea that he was just a squatter on borrowed time. The rain was no longer just water. It was a physical weight crushing me against the concrete. I dragged my suitcase for 6 blocks before the neon sign of a 24-hour burger joint offered a reprieve. I stumbled inside, dripping wet, ignoring the stares of the few truck drivers and night shift workers scattered across the greasy vinyl booths. I ordered a black coffee just to buy the right to sit down, counting out 3 singles from my wallet. I pulled my phone out to check my bank balance, hoping to book a motel room for the night. A notification flashed on the screen, bright and cruel. "Alert joint account access suspended by primary holder. Please contact your branch." I checked my wallet again. I had exactly $50 in cash. That was it. That was the sum total of my worth after 8 years of marriage. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my throat, a hysterical sound that threatened to turn into a scream. Above the counter, a small television was playing the local news. The headline, "Luxury Living," scrolled across the bottom. My heart stopped. There, on the screen, stood Marcus. He was dry, impeccable in his tuxedo, holding a microphone. Beside him, Jessica was preening for the camera, wearing a dress I recognized from a magazine I couldn't afford. "We call it Blackwood Manor," Marcus was saying to the reporter, his smile blinding. "It is a testament to what a man can build when he has the right inspiration. Jessica here. She has been my muse." "Oh, Marcus? Stop!" Jessica giggled, batting her eyelashes. "I just helped with the vibe. We wanted a home that reflected our future." I watched Marcus put his hand on the small of her back. The reporter nodded enthusiastically. "It is truly the American dream," the reporter said. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud break, but a quiet, permanent fracture. The tears that had been blinding me for the last hour suddenly evaporated. I looked at the coffee in my hand. It was cold. I looked at the couple on the screen. They were thieves. And I was done being the victim. A hush fell over the diner. Outside the grimy window, a sleek, black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the curb, displacing the water in a majestic wave. It looked like a spaceship that had landed in a swamp. 2 men in black suits stepped out, ignoring the rain, and walked into the diner. They scanned the room once, spotted me, and marched over. "Ms. Vance," the lead bodyguard said, his voice low and respectful. "Please. The car is waiting." I did not ask who sent them. I knew. I stood up, leaving the cold coffee and the $50 on the table, and followed them out. The interior of the Rolls-Royce was a different universe. It was warm, silent, and smelled of aged leather and cigar smoke. Sitting in the back seat, looking as immutable as a mountain, was William Sterling. He did not hug me. He did not say he told me so. He simply pressed a button to raise the partition between us and the driver, ensuring total privacy. Then he handed me a manila folder. "Read it," he said. I opened the file. It was a forensic accounting report and a private investigator's log. My eyes scanned the pages, widening with every line. "He didn't just cheat on you with Jessica," my father said, his voice void of pity. "He has been sleeping with her for 2 years, and look at page 4. I turned the page. There were bank transfers, dozens of them. Money siphoned from the construction budget into a private account held by Patricia Vance. He stole $300,000 from the company to buy his mother a condo in Florida." I whispered, my finger tracing the numbers. I thought we were broke. I thought we couldn't afford better materials. And he was stealing from me the whole time. He is a con artist. "Elena," my father said, "he used your talent to build his reputation, and he used my money to build his fortune. He thinks he has won." My father reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a handkerchief, offering it to me. I looked at it, but I did not take it. I did not need to wipe my eyes anymore. "So," William Sterling said, leaning back and looking at me with a sharp, assessing gaze, "here is the question. Do you want to cry about the husband you lost? Or do you want to take back the empire he stole?" I looked down at the photo of Marcus and Jessica laughing on a yacht, taken 3 months ago when he told me he was at a concrete convention in Vegas. I closed the folder. I looked my father in the eye. "I want everything," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I want to leave him with nothing but the shirt on his back." My father smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "Good," he said. "Welcome back to the family." For 2 weeks, I existed in a cocoon of silence and high thread count cotton within the guest wing of my father's estate. I was fed organic broth, examined by private doctors, and allowed to sleep until the dark circles under my eyes faded. But while my body healed, my mind was sharpening into a weapon. I was no longer the weeping woman in the rain. I was a Sterling, and I was preparing for war. On the 8th morning, I walked into the library where my father's legal team was waiting. They sat around a mahogany table like a council of war, led by Arthur Penhaligon, a man who had destroyed competitors for breakfast for 40 years. "Good morning, Elena," Arthur said, sliding the Vanguard Horizons contract across the table. "We have dissected every syllable of the document your husband signed. It is a masterclass in entrapment." I sat down, keeping my back straight. "Tell me everything." Arthur smiled, a thin, predatory expression. "First, the land. Marcus believes he bought the Blackwood estate. He did not. The land has belonged to the Sterling Trust for 20 years. The contract he signed was a land lease agreement. He owns the bricks. But your father owns the dirt, and the lease has a termination clause that triggers the moment the lessee defaults on moral conduct. And the design I asked, leaning forward, that is the beauty of it." A younger lawyer chimed in, tapping a specific paragraph. "You are listed as the technical guarantor. The contract stipulates that the intellectual property of the Blackwood Manor design belongs exclusively to you. The funding was conditional on your employment and supervision. By firing you and removing you from the project, Marcus effectively turned his own house into an illegal copyright infringement. He is living in a stolen idea." I felt a cold thrill run down my spine. It was perfect. It was absolute. "So we can evict him?" I asked. "We can destroy him," Arthur corrected gently. "But first, we let him hang himself." I left the meeting and went straight to my father's private stylist. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw the long, wavy hair that Marcus loved because he said it made me look innocent. "Cut it," I ordered. "How short?" Madam the stylist asked. "Short enough that no one will ever mistake me for a victim again," I replied. An hour later, a sharp, angular bob framed my face. I traded my soft, flowy dresses for a tailored crimson suit that looked like armor. I was ready. We learned that Marcus was hosting a massive housewarming gala on Saturday night. It was the event of the season, and he planned to use the spotlight to announce his engagement to Jessica. It was the perfect stage for his execution. To unsettle him, I sent a package to the mansion. It was anonymous. Inside was a charcoal sketch I had made years ago, a drawing of him sleeping on a park bench when we were poor. It was raw and intimate. I wanted him to remember the woman who loved him when he was nothing. My phone buzzed an hour later. It was a text from a blocked number. "Nice try with the sentimental trash." I threw it in the fire. "Stop begging. It is pathetic." I stared at the screen and smiled. He thought I was nostalgic. He had no idea I was just checking if he was home. I walked back into the library where Arthur was on the phone. He looked up and nodded at me. "It is done," Arthur said, putting the receiver down. "We have utilized the cross-border lien clauses in the Vanguard contract. We have frozen his offshore accounts in the Caymans and the Swiss holding company he set up for your mother-in-law. He won't know until he tries to make a transfer greater than $10,000. Does he have access to any cash I asked?" "Just what is in his wallet," Arthur replied. "By the time the party starts, he will be technically insolvent." "Perfect," I said, walking to the window to look out at the city skyline. "Let him have his champagne. It is the last thing he will ever taste that he didn't pay for with my sweat." Blackwood Manor was ablaze with light, looking less like a home and more like a cruise ship stranded on the Beverly Hills hillside. The driveway was a river of polished chrome as limousines deposited the city's elite, the hungry press, and the sycophants Marcus was so desperate to impress. From the shadows of the street, I watched the spectacle. It was a coronation. Marcus, Patricia, and Jessica were holding court in the grand foyer, greeting guests with the benevolent smiles of lottery winners who believed they had earned their fortune. Marcus looked devastatingly handsome in a bespoke tuxedo, the kind he used to say was a waste of money. Patricia was draped in emeralds that I knew were paid for with embezzled funds, and Jessica wore a shimmering silver gown that clung to her like a second skin. They laughed, they clinked crystal glasses, and they basked in the admiration of strangers. They looked like a perfect, happy family, cleansed of the stain that was me. Inside the ballroom, the music swelled. Marcus stepped onto the stage, tapping the microphone to silence the crowd of 200 people. The room fell into an obedient hush. He beamed, raising a glass of vintage champagne high above his head. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Marcus said, his voice smooth and projecting confidence. "They told me I was dreaming too big. They told me a boy from nowhere could not build a palace. But I did. I built this with my own 2 hands." He gestured to the soaring ceiling, taking credit for every archway I had drawn and every load-bearing wall I had calculated. And I could not have done it without my true inspiration. Marcus continued, extending a hand toward Jessica, who glided up the stairs to join him, my muse, my rock. "Jessica, thank you for showing me what real support looks like." Jessica giggled, leaning into the microphone. "Oh, Marcus, you did it all. I just kept you happy." While they preened on stage, the atmosphere at the front gates was shifting. Our convoy of 3 black SUVs and my father's Phantom rolled up to the entrance. The security team Marcus had hired, big men in tight shirts, stepped forward to block the path, their hands raised in warning. My father's driver lowered the window. William Sterling did not say a word. He simply leaned forward into the light. The head of security froze. He recognized the face that appeared on the cover of Forbes and in the nightmares of Wall Street bankers. The color drained from the guard's face, and he frantically waved the other men aside, bowing his head as the gates swung open for us. I stepped out of the car. I was no longer the shivering, broken woman in a soaked blouse. I wore a crimson suit tailored to perfection, my hair cut in a sharp, dangerous bob, and I wore diamonds that belonged to the Sterling Vault. Not a department store. Flanked by my father and a phalanx of 6 unsmiling lawyers, I walked up the marble steps I had chosen myself. The heavy mahogany doors swung open with a boom that echoed through the hall. We entered the ballroom at the precise moment Marcus was delivering his final toast. "So here is to the future," Marcus shouted, his face flushed with victory. "A future without dead weight, a future without burdens." The sound of my heels clicking on the marble floor cut through the room like a gunshot. Heads turned, one by one. The conversations died. The silence spread from the back of the room to the front like a cold wave until the only sound was the hum of the air conditioning. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a wide aisle for us. I stopped in the center of the room, my father standing like a monolith beside me. Marcus looked down from the stage. His smile faltered, then twisted into a sneer of annoyance. He squinted against the stage lights, not yet recognizing the man beside me, seeing only his discarded wife crashing his party. Unbelievable! Marcus scoffed into the microphone, his voice dripping with condescension. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. It seems my mentally unstable ex-wife has decided to make a scene. She just can't let go." He pointed a finger at me, his eyes hard and cold. "Security," he barked. "Get this crazy woman out of here. Drag her out if you have to." The room held its breath. Marcus waited for his men to move. He waited for the rough hands to grab me and throw me back into the street. But nobody moved. The security guards stood lined up against the wall, their eyes fixed on the floor, terrified to lift a finger against William Sterling. Marcus looked around, confusion flickering in his eyes for the first time. "I said, get her out," Marcus screamed, his voice cracking. "Why aren't you moving?" "Because," I said, my voice calm but projecting clearly across the silent hall. "They know who really owns the ground you are standing on. Marcus. And for the first time in your life, you are about to find out too." My father walked up the stairs to the stage with the slow, crushing inevitability of a glacier. Marcus tried to hold on to the microphone, his knuckles turning white, but my father simply reached out and took it from his hand. It was not a struggle. It was a confiscation. "You seem confused." "Son," my father said, his voice booming through the speakers and bouncing off the vaulted ceiling, "allow me to clarify the ownership structure. I am William Sterling. I am the chairman of Vanguard Horizons, and I have owned the dirt under your feet for 20 years. Marcus turned the color of ash. He took a stumbling step back, nearly tripping over the long train of Jessica's silver dress. "No." "That is impossible," Marcus stammered, sweat instantly breaking out on his forehead. "I signed with a fund. An anonymous investment fund. You can't just appear and claim my house. Project it." Arthur ordered from the floor. The giant LED screen behind the stage, which had been displaying a slideshow of Marcus's vanity photos, flickered and changed. The legal contract appeared, magnified for 200 guests to see. The laser pointer from the legal team circled the preamble. Vanguard Horizons, a subsidiary of the Sterling Family Trust. I stepped onto the stage. The silence in the room was electric. I took the microphone from my father. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and realized he was just a small man in a big suit. "You were always so eager to sign things." "Marcus," I said, my voice steady and cold, "but you never liked to read the boring parts. Did you not read Section 14B? The screen shifted. The text was highlighted in bright red. "It states that in the event the borrower violates the sanctity of marriage." I read aloud, my eyes locking with his. "The lease is immediately terminated, and ownership of all improvements on the land reverts to the landowner's biological daughter." "That would be me!" "This is a scam," Jessica shrieked, grabbing Marcus's arm and shaking him. "You are lying. We are in love. You can't take a house because of love." "Love," I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Mr. Penhaligon, please show the exhibit regarding the breach of contract." The screen changed again. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Photos of Marcus and Jessica entering a hotel room dated 2 years ago appeared. Text messages detailing their affair were scrolled on the side. It was undeniable proof of infidelity, triggering the clause instantly. "You have been cheating since before the foundation was poured," I said. "According to the contract, your lease expired the moment you touched her." A primal scream erupted from the side of the stage. Patricia, eyes bulging with rage, charged at me like a bull. "You ungrateful witch," Patricia screamed. Her hands clawed into talons as she rushed the stairs. "My son paid for this house. He built it. You are stealing our money," before she could reach me. One of my father's bodyguards stepped in front of her. He did not even push her. He just stood there, a wall of muscle, and she bounced off him, stumbling back into a waiter holding a tray of drinks. Glasses shattered on the floor. "He didn't pay for anything." "Patricia," I said, looking down at her with pity. "That is the final part of the joke. The $50 million used to build this place, that was a loan from Vanguard Horizons. A callable loan." I turned back to Marcus, who was now trembling visibly. "Because you violated the terms of the agreement," I explained, driving the final nail into the coffin. "The loan is now in default. The principal sum of $50 million is due immediately. Not in 5 years. Now. Tonight." The room erupted. The polite silence shattered into a cacophony of whispers and shock. I saw dozens of phones raised in the air, the red recording lights blinking like fireflies. The live stream comments were scrolling so fast they were a blur. The downfall of Marcus Vance was being broadcast to the world in real time. 50 million, Marcus whispered, his knees finally giving way as he slumped against the podium. I don't have $50 million. I know," I said, looking out at the crowd of people who used to look through me. "Which means everything here, from the chandeliers to the silverware, now belongs to me to cover your debt. You are trespassing in my house. Marcus." The doors to the ballroom flew open, but this time it was not a grand entrance for a billionaire. It was the sheriff's department, accompanied by federal marshals. My father's legal team had been thorough. The eviction notice was already signed, sealed, and ready to be served. Marcus Vance, Patricia Vance, and Jessica Miller. The lead officer announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the stunned crowd. "You are trespassing on private property. We have a court order for your immediate removal." The color drained from Marcus's face until he looked like a corpse in a tuxedo. He looked at the police, then at the contract still glowing on the screen behind him, and finally at me. The reality of his ruin crashed down on him all at once. He did not fight. He crumbled. He fell to his knees, crawling across the polished marble floor toward the edge of the stage where I stood. He reached out, grabbing the hem of my pants, tears streaming down his face, ruining his expensive tan. "Elena, please. You can't do this," he sobbed, his voice cracking with pathetic desperation. I was under so much pressure. The business, the debt. It was Jessica. She seduced me. She made me turn against you. I still love you. Elena, I always loved you. I looked down at him. I felt absolutely nothing. The love I once had for him had been washed away in the rain 3 weeks ago. "Get your hands off me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. I stepped back, forcing him to release his grip. "You threw me out into a storm 3 weeks ago." "Marcus," I said, ensuring my voice carried to the back of the room. "You tossed my life into the mud and laughed. I am not being cruel. I am just taking back my father's house." Jessica, who had been standing frozen near the champagne tower, suddenly seemed to process the math. $50 million in debt, no house, no assets. "I didn't sign anything," Jessica yelled, backing away. I barely know him. I am just an employee." She kicked off her high heels and sprinted toward the service exit, abandoning her so-called soulmate without a backward glance. Marcus watched her go, his mouth hanging open in betrayal. "All right, show's over," the officer grunted. 2 officers hauled Marcus to his feet. Another 2 grabbed Patricia, who was still screeching about her rights. They were marched out of the front doors, past the very spot where they had filmed my humiliation. The press was waiting. Hundreds of camera flashes exploded in the night, capturing every second of their disgrace. They were dragged out of the gates of Blackwood Manor, leaving behind their dignity and their stolen future. 6 months later, the ghost of Marcus Vance was gone from the estate. I renamed the property the Phoenix Center. I redesigned the interior, stripping away the gold and velvet vanity of my ex-husband and replacing it with light, open spaces. It was now a sanctuary and incubator for women entrepreneurs, a place where talent could find funding without exploitation. Marcus did not fare as well. With his reputation destroyed and his wages garnished to pay back the colossal debt to Vanguard Horizons, he was forced to take the only job he could find. He was working as a general laborer on a construction site in the valley, pouring concrete under the hot sun. He lived in a studio apartment with a leaky roof, and the society he once desperately tried to impress now crossed the street to avoid him. I stood on the balcony of the master suite, holding a cup of tea. The sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. My father stepped out to join me, leaning against the railing. "You did good, kid," he said quietly. I looked out at the city. I was no longer defined by a husband, a father, or a last name. I was an architect. I was a survivor. And for the first time in my life, I was free. "I know," I replied, and I smiled. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below and share your thoughts on Marcus's karma. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel Mia Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button so more people can hear this story. See you in the next one.